Let's take a look at a more efficient way to program your new KG Q10H HT. Hi, and welcome to the Gadget Talk channel, where we do reviews and how-tos on a variety of electronic gadgets that catch my eye. In this video, we're going to do an in-depth tutorial on using the Wouxun KG Q10H CPS to configure your radio. If you find this video helpful, please click the thumbs up button below the video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. Click the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos. As I said in the opening, I find using a CPS, whether the manufacturer software or Chirp, is a much more efficient way to set up my HTs. This is especially true when doing the initial setup, when I'm typically entering system settings and 20 to 50 channels into the memory modes. Be sure to stick around to the end, where we'll discuss how to add Chirp's predefined frequency groups to your KG Q10H's memories. As with all CPSs, it's important to make sure you have a programming cable that your computer recognizes. The large USB-A end of the clip contains a chip that translates the signals to and from the radio into something the computer recognizes, and vice versa. In the past, I'd always heard that Wouxun radios required a red Wouxun programming cable. I have one, but this time I tried my FTDI cable and it worked just fine. FTDI refers to the driver the cable uses to communicate with the computer. As with most manufacturers' CPSs, the Wouxun CPS runs only on Windows computers. If you run a Mac, you've got the choice to get a cheap Windows laptop for your radio software, or see if the CPS will run in a virtual Windows machine on your Mac. As you'll see in a minute, the first step is to plug your programming cable and check the Windows Device Manager to see what COM port Windows assigned to the cable. You'll need to select that port when you open your CPS program. Let's jump to the computer and take a look at some of the screens and options the CPS has for you. This is the Q10H CPS display, and you can see the radio comes programmed with a number of these simplex channels that I think I referred to in the last review. And we're going to really want to get rid of these things, and so we'll show you a little bit about how to do that. But as we set up, let's take a look at a couple of important things first. The first thing we need to do is we need to look at our device manager. And the device manager will give us our ports, and we want to look for the USB serial port that represents the programming cable that we've got plugged in. In this case, I've got an FTDI computer plugged in, and the computer assigned it to COM port 4, and so I want to make sure that I remember that. So here we are back on the display. And as a brief tour, we've got the typical Windows drop-down menus here. So we've got File, that includes New and Open and Save. Edit allows us to copy and paste, write to the radio, read from the radio. Here's the port command. In this case, it generates a pop-up, and we want to select COM port 4, so I'll be sure to do that. Hit OK. And there's About command that gives us who wrote the software and the version and that kind of thing. Below, we have the icons that represent most of the same menu choices in the drop-down menus, and so that's going to be easy for you to use if you prefer to speak icon instead of drop-down. And then the display also has these tabs. So we've got channel information, config settings, VFO, broadcast keys, VFOs, and call settings. So we'll look at those very briefly. Now, one of the things that most CPSs don't have is that they don't allow you to do many of the same functions that you can do with normal Excel spreadsheets. And this one has a few that you are able to do. So if I start here with number 10, because I don't want these, I can go down here to number 35 and hit Shift click. And so I've got those identified. They all fill in. And then if I go up here to edit, I can clear selected channels. Clear the channels, yes. Again, I want to get rid of these, so I'll click number 40, shift click on 60, go up to edit, clear selected channels, and now all of those are gone, making it very easy to make changes. What I would recommend the first time that you're dealing with this is to load the radio's programming. Now, I've programmed my radio before, and so it's going to come up with the channels that I've added in a previous programming session. But to do that, then I have my USB cable plugged into the computer. You saw it was recognized. I've got it plugged into the radio. I've got the radio on. And so you can see my radio and my computer screen there in front of me. And so I can either go up to read from radio or read from radio over here. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to read from the radio. You can see the radio starts to flash. The data box opens up on the radio. And then if we look carefully up here on the screen, you can see that the progress bar is starting to move across. The radio rebooted and we're good to go. Now you can see all the various things that I've programmed into my radio. So let's work our way across here. First are the calling channels that I have in the radio that comes with the radio, those 4 bands. And then I've added some frequencies here. Now to add a frequency, it's really pretty easy. You just click on the box, type in the frequency, 146.520. And when I click out of that, it gives me the simplex return in the transmit frequency. It doesn't add any CTCSSs. It makes it wide, and these other choices are there. And then I can give it a name right over here. If this were a repeater, then I would apply the offset here. So I would either, depending on the frequency, I would either add 0.6 or subtract 0.6 from the receive frequency, and then use a drop-down box to add a CTCSS code. If you scroll down further, you get into the DCS codes. Now, in this case, I'm just going to leave it off, and when I click out, it goes off. Now, if you have both a receive and transmit, fill in the receive first, because that'll add the same code into the transmit column, and it saves you a couple of clicks. Down here, you can see I have my 70 centimeter repeaters typed in. Here is one that has 2 CTCSSs. And then down here, I added a couple of local 220 repeaters. And then down here on channel 50, I added the GMRS channels. And we'll talk a little bit more about doing that here at the end of the demonstration. Now, when we move here to configure settings, these are the menu items that we have. And so if we can set our battery saver, we can get it on or off. Those are drop-down boxes. I've got my weather alert off. The kind of notification I want is turning on the weather channel, but I can also get an icon, I can get a tone, I can have the LEDs flash. There's a number of choices here. I've got the Roger beep off, timeout timer. Again, a drop-down box gives you a variety of settings, some of which are very long, and you probably wouldn't want to go that long unless for some reason you're using this radio as a commercial radio. I've got an alert for 5 seconds that would go off to warn me that I'm about to overtalk my timeout timer. I've got the Vox off, and you can see these various other things. This beep is for beeps when I press my keyboard. The scan mode are 3. The time operations will allow the radio to scan until it hits a carrier, then it'll linger there for a few seconds, and then it'll start scanning again. Carrier operations does the same thing, except when it hits the carrier, it stays there until the carrier goes away. And then SE will end the scan as soon as it lands on a channel, and I think of that as scan end. And the themes are the 10 that are available for the radio, and you can then set customs as well using the color codes here on this side. So then we have some push-to-talk ID settings, DTMF codes, again, generally not something the typical ham would use. There's an alert tone publish that's primarily used to access repeaters in Europe. Priority scanning will give you the channel that it will listen to more often when it's scanning. And then the rest of these are all there to include turning the GPS on or off. It adds more power, so if you're not going to use a GPS, and I tend not to, I've got it turned off. So those are the configuration settings. In VFO settings, it gives you each of the bands and where it's going to start out, at least to start with. And then it gives you these various other things. So if you were to tune into the 220 band, it's not going to have CTCSS or DCS codes. The power is going to be high and so forth. In work mode here, I've got it set for channel name, and I could set it for VFO, channel number, channel frequency, or channel name. I do better with names, and so I've got my work mode set for channel names. Over here are my broadcast memories, and I've programmed a few of the local Phoenix FM broadcast channels, so they are programmed here, and so I can access those using the up and down buttons on my radio when I send the radio into the FM radio mode. Key settings are very handy. These allow you to program the two side keys, the top key, and then the push-to-talk 1 and 2 keys. And so I've got push-to-talk 1 set as area A, and here are my choices. I can go with area B, main, secondary, low power, high power. So I can make some changes to this. Push-to-talk 2 I have set to area B. It offers me the same choices. Now in my top key, I've got the top button set to turn on the FM radio. A long press will turn on the flashlight, but we have a whole list of things that we can program these buttons to do. So we can turn them off with undefined. We can set an alarm, bright plus, set favorites, flashlights, FM radio, scans, scanning a CTCSS or DCS codes, talk around or setting the weather. All of those are available to you in these drop downs. And these are the same list for each of the choices. So in PF1, I'll turn on scanning. A long press will put my GPS map up on the screen. PF2 gives me the weather, and a long press on PF2 will move the radio into monitor mode, which is basically squelch level 0. If the radio is going to be remote control, these are the defaults. I don't remote control my radio. The top message is at the top of the display. I put my call sign in there. The area message, I've got the model number there, but I could change it to something else. And that area message is the space vacated if you move out of the transmitter dual receive. Over here we have the VFO scan mode. So you can program your radio into various banks or channels, and then you can give it a name. So if channels 1 through 100 was your local area, you could call it local, and that would be in group 1. If channel 101 to channel 200 was a different purpose or a different geography, you could program those channels into channels 101 to 200, give that a name, and all the way through the 999 channels. That basically means that you don't have to have 999 different channels. You may have a number of channels that are the same in each of those banks, but those banks are going to be set up for different purposes or for different locations. The VFO scan mode will give you the specific ranges of frequencies that the radio will scan when you are in the VFO mode. And then last is call settings, and call settings have to do with using the DTMF codes. You assign a call code to various call groups. Everyone who has that code set in their radio will be part of the group, and then you could call that group individually. It's just a way of providing a reduction in what you're listening to, much the same as a CTCSS code. So those are the basic settings you're going to have here with your CPS. And then when you've made changes, like I've made changes here, it's always a good idea to save those. And so in this case, I'm going to go File, I'm going to go to Save. I keep mine in a Q10H file here in what I call Chirp images on my online OneDrive account. And I usually save these by using a date. And so I'm going to go 2023/12/03, and then I'm going to call it the Q10H, so I know for sure that that's what this is. It's being filed as a KG file, that's the file extension, and I'm going to save it. So in this case, I'll use the drop-down menu. I'm going to go to Write to Radio. It gives me the same display, just like the icon. And now you can see the radio is flashing. The green data screen is displayed. And you can see things are moving along on the status bar up there on my computer. Again, the radio rebooted. And now all of those changes are in my radio. So when working with a CPS, it's really much easier when you're going to be adding a bunch of channels or doing the initial setup for your radio. As promised at the beginning of this video, let me show you how you can add some of the frequency groupings from Chirp. It's not as easy as working directly within Chirp, but it's certainly much easier than typing dozens and dozens of frequencies into the CPS. So we're going to get started here, noting that we're going to select our radio and then, the brand and all that, and you're going to find that the Q10 is not included. So we're going to start then by going to File. We're going to go to New to open up a channel settings. Then we're going to go back to File, and we're going to go back to Open Stock Configurations. And we have a number of these here for different parts of the world. So in this case, we're just going to select our GMRS channels. We'll click on that, and then now they're all here. I don't want the FRS channels because, well, frankly, they are the same as the GMRS channels. So I'm going to shift click on these, and then I'm going to right click on my mouse, and then I'm going to click delete, and then I'm going to move the block up. So everything now moved up, and so here are my GMRS channels. With these selected, there's not a lot of information. The data elements are in a different order, but we're going to export them as a CVS file and then manipulate them in Excel. So here we're going to go File, we're going to Export, we're going to pick a place to export it. I'm just going to drop it on my desktop. They're saved, and now I've got these in a file that I can use. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing with the CPS with the Q10H. And so here's the channels that I have in the Q10H. I'm going to add those GMRS channels. So I'm going to go up here to File, and I'm going to go Channel Export. I'm going to pick a place to put it, and I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to call it the date with the word base, so I know that this is the one that I'm going to be modifying. It's exported. So now I'm done with this, and I'm going to open that same file in Excel in one of the tabs with the previously downloaded CSV file. So here I have the GMRS channels with a lot of information that I'm not going to need, frankly, but it's going to give me my head start. And then here I have my CSV file for the radio that I just downloaded. So I'm going to go down to 50 is where I'm going to start. And I'm going to go over here to my GMRS channels, and I'm going to copy everything in this row. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to place it in the row that corresponds to name, which is back over here in row P. I'll paste that down. I'm going to go back here to my frequencies. I'm going to get those. I'm going to copy that. Again, I'm going to go over here to my base. I see that this is the channel for receive. So back down to channel 50. Pasted those frequencies in. And now I'm going to do the same thing in the transmit. So I've got all that down. And so here when I get to my GMRS repeater frequencies, I'm just going to go through each of these individual and change these to 7s. Now I've got a couple of other little things that I need to do changes to or make changes on. I'm not going to put any CTCSS codes, and so we see here in this the word off is used. So I'm going to just copy these Go down here for off, paste them in, and then I'm going to put them in each of these. Here's the channel width and the channel power. I'm not going to broadcast, so I'm just going to fill them in so that there's something in those squares. And then I'm going to come back here and change my wides to narrow for the interstitial channels. I'm going to change these to narrow. And I'm going to take this row that kind of finishes off everything. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that. And then I'm going to bring that down for all of these channels. That way I'm not going to get any errors when I read it in. I've got something in here. Again, they're going to be receive-only channels. I don't care. But in case the software does, I want it to be able to go in there. Now I've got this filled out with the GMRS coming in at channel 50. I'm going to save this. I'm going to put it back up here in my online images, and then I'm going to make sure that I save it as a CSV file. So now in the Q10 CPS, I'm going to go File. I'm going to Import. There's my update CSV file. I'm going to open that. You can see those frequencies came in. The import was finished. And then now here I am at the GMRS, and all of those are in. So that's how I got my GMRS, and I can do that for the marine bands, I can do that for railroad bands, whatever it is that you might want to be using your radio for. Clearly, this is not as easy as working with Chirp directly, where you can just move things from one tab to another, but it does beat having to type all this information in one row at a time. I hope you found this deeper dive into the KG Q10 CPS helpful. Again, if you did, please click the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. Look over here to choose from the KG Q10H review video I did and for my amateur radio playlist for more ham content. Thanks for watching, and 73.